My phone lit up just as I was rinsing a cup in the sink. At first, I almost ignored it. Just another late-night distraction. But the words froze me. They're planning to cut you off. It was from my cousin, Mira. No explanation, no greeting. Just those 6 words. I stared at the screen, my reflection faint in the black glass of the window above the sink. My chest thudded as if my own body wanted to answer before I could. Cut me off? From what? From who? My fingers moved without thought. Let them try. The message sent, and a silence fell so heavy I could hear the hum of the refrigerator stretching between the seconds. I didn't know what Mira meant, but somehow I already felt the knife's shadow. The morning after Mira's message, everything looked the same. The roads outside my apartment still glistened from the night's rain, the neighborhood dogs barked at delivery men, and the cheap clock in my kitchen ticked through another hollow cycle. But beneath that normal rhythm was a scrape, a scratch against my nerves, a loosened thread nobody else could see. I went through my routine the way a nurse goes through rounds. Methodical, practiced, pretending not to notice the blood under the bandage. Coffee, pressed shirt, the quiet shuffle of papers into my bag. And yet every sound hid sharper meaning. The kettle's hiss felt like a warning. The phone's stillness, like a held breath. By the time I reached school, the familiar building loomed like a stage I'd walked into one too many times. Rows of lockers, peeling paint, the same jokes echoing from students who didn't know I collected their laughter like spare coins in my empty pockets. I was a teacher, but in my family's world, that meant little. I was the settled-for-less child, the one who didn't marry into money, who didn't chase law school, who didn't build empires out of thin air. My cousin Mira once teased that I lived like a ghost teacher, present enough to be useful, invisible enough to be forgotten. My family still hosted dinners, still posted smiling photos, still called me for favors disguised as opportunities. But lately their pauses during conversations lasted just a beat too long. Their questions were rehearsed, trimmed of warmth. And when I sat with them, I often felt like the placeholder in their carefully curated portrait, the person who could vanish, and the picture would look neater without me. That was the dread Mira had put into words. They're planning to cut you off. I replayed it as I passed my colleagues in the hallway, all of us cloaked in morning rituals. A student asked me about extra credit. The printer jammed again in the teacher's lounge. Life ticked forward like nothing had cracked open. But inside, I was listening differently now, to the edges, the pauses, the silences. At lunch, I caught myself watching the door, half expecting Mira to appear, to whisper what she really meant. She didn't. Instead, I ate in quiet, each bite dry in my throat. On the walk home, I noticed the absence most. The absence in my phone, silent when it usually hummed with family chatter about upcoming birthdays, holidays, excuses to gather. Their silence wasn't neglect anymore. It was coordination. And that's when my stomach turned cold. Maybe Mira hadn't meant cut me off metaphorically. Maybe it wasn't about inheritance or distance or family dinners. Maybe it was about something final, something I wasn't supposed to survive. The trigger came 2 nights later, disguised as a gift. It was a plain birthday box, brown cardboard, no glitter, no ribbon, just my name written in a neat slant across the top. It sat on my doorstep like it had been waiting, though no delivery van ever came down my street that evening. It wasn't my birthday, not for another 2 months. I crouched, touched the edge of the box. It was light, disturbingly so, like holding a container full of breath. My neighbor's dog barked down the hall, but I stood frozen. The kind of frozen where imagination overtakes reality. Was there something alive inside? Or maybe something already dead? Finally, I carried it in, shut the door, and placed it on my counter. For a long time, I just stared at it. The cardboard seemed to pulse in the low kitchen light. When I slid it open with the edge of a butter knife, what spilled out wasn't what I expected. No gift, no object I could name, just photographs, dozens of them. They slid across the counter, a river of glossy prints. My breath snagged in my throat as I realized each one was of me. Not selfies, not family gatherings. They were candid, street corners, the grocery store, my classroom parking lot. Images taken from far enough to hide the photographer, but close enough to catch the tired details of my face, my slouched shoulders, The way I held my bag on the wrong side. One photo stopped me cold. An image of me standing just outside my parents' house last winter, snowflakes tangled in my hair. I hadn't known anyone was watching that night. I thought I'd been alone. The bottom of the box was marked with a single line, written in block letters with permanent marker. You don't belong. A chill went through me so sharp I thought my body might split open. For a long while I couldn't move. The refrigerator hummed. My pulse beat against my ribs. The photos looked like proof of a life I didn't even remember fully living. Like someone had been archiving not just my presence, but my solitude. I gathered them into a stack, though my hands trembled so much the edges bent. Who had sent this? Mira? Was this her warning turned physical, or was this connected to what she had texted before? I called her, thumb pressing her name on my screen. It rang once, twice, then 4 times. Voicemail. Her voice was calm in the recording, but listening to it felt like hearing the echo of someone already gone. I didn't leave a message. I couldn't. Instead, I sank into the only chair in my kitchen, photos spilling from my lap, hands cold and stiff around them. That was when I realized this box wasn't random. It was an announcement. And whoever sent it already knew where I lived. When I was younger, I used to believe our family was close-knit, the type that laughed around crowded tables, where the stories bent toward old photographs and good wine. I swallowed that narrative so completely, I didn't notice the fracture lines until they became fault lines. The truth is, in my family, everything was built on comparison. On one side, you had Daniel, my older brother, the golden child. His laugh filled rooms. His report cards gleamed with A's that were pinned to the fridge like medals. His path was a straight road into law school and financial security. Then there was me, the other one. The one who drew in the corners of notebooks during lectures. The one whose teachers wrote, promising but distracted. The one who became a teacher rather than a lawyer, as if teaching wasn't a profession, but a confession of failure. It didn't matter that I loved my students, that I saw their small triumphs like flickers of light in dark years. In my family's eyes, none of that counted. I remember one particular Thanksgiving. I had just published a small essay in a local magazine, something I was proud of. I handed it clumsily to my mother at the table. She flipped through it, smiled faintly, said, "That's nice, dear," then turned her head just as my father clinked his glass to announce Daniel's latest internship. The room erupted in applause. My essay was left, beside the turkey, soaking in the cranberry sauce that spilled from someone's plate. That was the rhythm. My triumphs quietly shelved, Daniel's mistakes spun into charm, and Mira, my cousin, she saw. Too much, maybe. She sat beside me during those family dinners, whispering little observations. Notice how they never let you finish a story? Notice how your uncle only asks about your job when no one is listening? Mira wasn't cruel about it. She was observant, like me. And in a family drowning in their own performance, that made her dangerous too. She once leaned close during Christmas and said under her breath, "You're cast as the shadow. Daniel's the light, but shadows remember things the light can't touch." At the time, I laughed. I thought she was being poetic. Now I wonder if she'd been warning me all along. There were subtler cruelties too, the ones you can't prove to anyone else. The pauses when I spoke, the way financial conversations left me out of the circle, the way my mother sighed if I reached for more food, or the careful smile Daniel gave when he checked up on me, as if to measure how far behind I still was. Once, when I was 19, I overheard my parents in the kitchen. My mother said, "He's not like Daniel. He'll never take care of us properly," and my father's sigh carried the weight of agreement. I walked out quietly that night, but something hard grew in me, something silent that knew I would always be defending my right to exist at the same table. So when Mira's text came, the one that said, "They're planning to cut you off," I didn't doubt her. I didn't doubt it for a second, because cutting me off wasn't new. They had been trimming me out of frame since I was born. Now I wondered what the final cut would look like. Was it financial? Was it inheritance? Was it something darker? The box of photographs pulsed in my memory like an echo. You don't belong. I imagined Daniel behind it all. He'd always had a subtle smirk, half pity, half triumph, when comparing our lives. He never needed to raise his voice. His power came in how easily others aligned with him. My parents bent toward him like plants to the sun, and I, a crooked stem left in shadow, grew twisted. But here lay the greater wound. I didn't just resent them. I longed for them. I longed for my mother's eyes to linger with pride, for my father's nod to mean approval, for Daniel's arm to rest on my shoulder in real warmth. I still wanted to belong, even to those who had branded me outsider. That hunger in me, that ache, has always been the lever of their control. And now Mira was telling me they were ready to end even the illusion. All the fragments swirled, the candid photos, the quiet exclusion, the parental whispers late at night, and an awful suspicion crept in. This wasn't just about preferences or favoritism. This reeked of something more systematic, something rehearsed. Maybe Mira was right. Maybe they were finally done pretending. The photographs wouldn't leave me alone. I tried stacking them in a drawer, but their glossy edges seemed to whisper against one another, restless and waiting. At night, I imagined the sound of shutters clicking outside my window. I began pulling the blinds, double-checking locks, memorizing the flicker of headlights on the street. It wasn't just surveillance, it was memory theft. Whoever had taken those photos had lived alongside me more intimately than anyone else in my life. They had studied me, archived my loneliness. The text, the box, they weren't separate. They were threads of the same design, and Mira was somehow at the center. On the fourth night, I drove to my parents' house. It was past 9. The windows glowed warmly against the dark, and for a moment I felt like I was 17 again, pulling into the driveway after practice, waiting for the smell of my mother's cooking to welcome me. But when I stepped inside, the warmth felt staged. Daniel's voice carried from the living room, confident, commanding. I stopped just out of sight, listening. "It can't drag out anymore," he was saying. "If we make it clean, it won't haunt us." Haunt us. My mother's reply was muffled, but I caught pieces. "He'll never forgive us. Doesn't even know. Doesn't even know." The words pinballed through my head until they struck something jagged. My skin prickled cold. I shouldn't have been standing there in the hallway, listening like a thief in my own parents' house, but I couldn't move. I eased back outside, heart pounding hard enough to blur my vision, and sat in my car until my breath steadied. I couldn't confront them. Not yet. But something was unfurling. A shape I didn't want to recognize. When I finally dared to text Mira again, she answered this time. Her message came quickly, like she'd been waiting. "They haven't told you the truth, have they?" I froze, staring. "The truth," I typed back. "What truth?" Her reply dinged almost instantly. "You were never supposed to know. But I can't watch them erase you. Not like this, erase me." That word sank all the way down, scraping bone. I pressed further, demanding she call me. Call, meet, explain. She refused. Her last message read, "Look in the files your dad keeps in the study. Bottom drawer. Then you'll understand I barely slept." At dawn, I drove back before anyone woke. My father's office still smelled faintly of cologne and dust. I knew the drawer Mira meant. The heavy oak one he always locked, though as a child I'd seen him slip a spare key above the frame. My fingers shook as I pulled the folder free. Paper crinkled beneath the weight of discovery. At first it seemed ordinary. Birth certificates, legal documents. But then I found it. My own birth record. The certificate was different from Daniel's. Different paper, different hospital, and in the field labeled Mother, a name I had never seen before. A stranger's name. The world seemed to tilt, my lungs compressing into nothing. I reread it over and over. My mother, my so-called mother, wasn't on this document. My father wasn't either. It was as if the entire foundation of who I thought I was had been built on forged ground. Mira's message echoed around me, sharp as glass. "You don't belong." It wasn't metaphorical. It wasn't cruelty. It was literal. I wasn't theirs. I had never been. I drove back that evening with the folder pressed to my chest, like evidence that could burn through skin. My fingers hurt from gripping the steering wheel. My heartbeat kept time with the wipers as rain slicked across the glass. When I stepped inside, my parents were at the dining table. Daniel stretched confidently in his chair. Their laughter halted the second they saw the folder in my hands. "I found it," I said, my voice low but steady. "The papers." My birth certificate. A flicker crossed my mother's face. Fear quickly smoothed into composure. My father leaned back, exhaling as though he'd been waiting for this moment for years. "You shouldn't have gone through those drawers," he said, his tone firm, paternal, as if the problem wasn't the secret but my discovery of it. I dropped the folder onto the table. Papers slid out like broken teeth. "Whose name is that?" I demanded. "Who is she? Who am I?" My mother placed her palm flat against the tablecloth, eyes wet but sharp. "You're ours." "Nothing else matters." "Don't," I snapped. "Don't twist this." "You lied to me every day of my life," Daniel intervened, calm as a surgeon. "We didn't lie. We protected you. You were fragile. You wouldn't have understood." There it was, the subtle gaslighting I knew too well. My anger framed as fragility, my questions as weakness. Protected me? My laugh was hollow. Or did you just protect yourselves? From shame? From inconvenience? My father's jaw tightened. Daniel leaned forward, eyes glinting like he had been waiting for this clash. "Do you realize what you're doing right now? You're tearing this family apart. You always do this. You dramatize, you blame, you look for reasons to resent us. You never just accept love when it's given." The words landed like stones. Always. Never. Dramatize. Resent. He knew how to lace poison into every syllable, to make me doubt the shape of my own memories. "Love," I whispered. "You call this love? Surveillance? Secrets? You were planning to cut me off. Your words, not mine." Mira warned me. Daniel's smirk twitched. A slip. My mother turned sharply toward me. "Mira should have kept quiet. She causes trouble she doesn't understand." My father's hand went up, silencing us. His voice was even, deliberate. "Yes. You were adopted. Your birth mother couldn't raise you. We did. That's the truth. And yes, we chose not to tell you, because you aren't strong enough to live with it. Mira never understood boundaries. It was calm, rehearsed, violence disguised as logic." I stood there, trembling, the folder at my feet like a cracked mirror. Their words filled the room like smoke. All of it. The golden child pedestal, the subtle exclusions, the surveillance, the label of fragility, suddenly aligned under one awful truth. They had always seen me as less, as conditional, a guest who could overstay. "You wanted me erased," I said finally, "not because of who I am, but because who I am proves what you hide." The silence that followed was suffocating. My parents stared. Daniel smirked faintly, and for the first time I realized I wasn't confronting them. I was cornered by them. The seconds stretched too long, 3 pairs of eyes fixed on me, their shapes twisting into something feral in the quiet house. My father rose first, his voice calm, each syllable weighted like a verdict. "You can't undo the life we've given you. Don't throw it away over paperwork. That's what he called my identity." My mother reached for my hand, her touch trembling, pleading. "You're my child. No matter what blood says. Isn't that enough?" Her words should have broken me. They almost did. But then I saw Daniel. His face carried none of her softness. His mouth curled. With calculation, his eyes sharp, almost satisfied, like a puppeteer watching strings tighten. "You think Mira's your ally?" he said lightly. "She's just as manipulated by you as you are by your self-pity. You feed her resentment, she feeds yours. It's pathetic, really." My breath hitched. The photographs, the surveillance, the box. "That was you, wasn't it?" He didn't answer, but the silence was louder than any confession. His smirk deepened as if to say, "What will you do now?" For years I had played their shadow child, doubting myself, shrinking at the sharpness of Daniel's words, at the disapproval behind my parents' sighs. But that box had changed me. It had revealed what they already believed. I was disposable, an accessory who'd served her purpose. Something inside me stilled, not rage, not grief, just an eerie clarity, cold and sharp. "You've rehearsed this," I said quietly. "The story, the roles, the excuses. You call it protection, you call it love, but it's just control. And I don't owe you silence anymore." My father's face hardened. "What are you saying?" My hand hovered over my phone, Mira's number waiting. I could send the photos, the papers, the hollowest truth of all. I was never theirs, and they wanted me gone. For the first time, I watched fear flicker in my brother's eyes. He hadn't expected me to see him clearly. I spoke evenly, almost whispering, "You spent your whole lives writing me out of the story. But now I get to choose my ending." No one moved. My mother's hand dropped away, pale as bone. Then I turned. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I walked away into the wet night, silence thick around me. Behind me, their voices rose, my father commanding, my mother pleading, Daniel's anger cutting through both. But I didn't listen. The photographs flashed in my head, one after another, like a film reel of my erasure. All those moments they thought were theirs to archive, to decide. But I was still here, still walking. I wasn't erased, not yet. I don't know what the word family means anymore. Maybe it was always just a story we tell ourselves, stitched with lies where the truth is too jagged to carry. I walk lighter now, though. Lighter because there's no more pretending. The photographs, the papers, Mira's warning, they stripped the illusion bare. They told me what my parents never dared say aloud. You were never one of us. But here's the quiet secret they'll never understand. I don't need their version of belonging anymore. Some nights, I lay the photographs across my table. I study them like relics of someone else's life, the tired teacher buying groceries, the solitary figure crossing the snow-lit driveway, the shadow leaning against a window. They thought they captured my disappearance. But what they really captured was survival. Every frame is proof that I endured, even when they pretended I didn't exist. Daniel still calls. Sometimes. His messages are calm, clipped, almost businesslike. "We should talk." "You're overreacting. I don't answer." My silence is the only inheritance I'll ever leave him. And Mira, she asks sometimes if I regret knowing. I tell her the truth. I don't regret it. Ignorance was a cage. The truth is a wound, yes, but it's a clean wound now. Was it betrayal? Was it survival? Or was it just the way love looks when twisted by fear and pride? I may never know. But one thing is certain. The story they tried to erase, the child they tried to unwrite. I am still here, and I will write the rest myself,